following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Good afternoon, and welcome again on this Wednesday afternoon to the Parson'S Porch. I am absolutely excited, as usual, to have you sharing with me today. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you are continuing to share the news with other people, with all of your friends, with everyone who is available to you. And I hope you heard me. I made a little goof file right there. Forgot to get my mic going, but we're good now. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. And of course, it's just me today. Matter of fact, well, no, it's not just me. It's just me and you. How about that? Okay. I'm excited to join you this afternoon. Today, I wanted to spend some time, let's say, with me and you alone. I have been doing a very exciting and intriguing, revealing series over the past couple of months in our Bible study. We've been talking about wow, the walk of wisdom, the way of wisdom, and words of wisdom. We've been in Proverbs, and I wanted today to just share with you maybe a kind of a recap with where we are, and to get you involved and to get you interested, and make sure you join us on Tuesday evenings on Facebook Live, please, for our Bible study. We have a few thousand people who join us every Tuesday night, but I'd love to have you. We want to get the word out that Bible study on Tuesday nights available to you, even if you can't leave home. We have a great Bible study. And today, I wanted to invite you to come and talk with me about something you probably wanted to talk about for a while. I'm in chapter 18 today, chapter 18, verse 1, and a few of the following verses of the book of Proverbs. And what they say are this. In NIV, the New International Version, and then the Message Version will come second. Chapter 18 says, an unfriendly person pursues selfish ends, and against all sound judgment starts quarrels. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. When wickedness comes, so does contempt, and with shame comes reproach. The words of the mouth are deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom is a rushing stream. Yeah, I'll stop there and read verses 1 through 4 as well in the Message Bible. Loners who care only for themselves spit on the common good. Fools care nothing for thoughtful discourse. All they do is run off at the mouth. When wickedness arrives, shame's not far behind, and contempt for life is contemptible. Many words rush along like rivers in flood, but deep wisdom flows up from artesian springs. I want to spend some time talking to you from this a little topic or thrust, if you will. Fools rush in. We've spoken before on one occasion. We talked a lot about wisdom. We talked about the book of Proverbs really being a guidebook, a manual for living, an opportunity for all of us to get it right, directions and instructions for nearly every encounter or interaction you ever going to have in your life. You can find advice, you can find guidance and direction about how you're going to handle these issues, and never have to believe that you're on your own. You know, one of the important things for me when we talk about this is that people do not understand that the lifestyle you choose is in fact the responsible party for your life and where you are at this moment. When we talked before about wisdom, I spoke to you about the idea that the wisdom of God is Jesus Christ. The manifestation of Christ is an expression of God's wisdom. And everything he says is an expression of the wisdom of God that he gave to all of us in the New Testament. However, the difference I tried to suggest is that many of us have tried to leave God out of the key elements and components of everyday living. Most of us don't think God belongs in our finances, in our marriages, or in our relationships. We don't believe that God should have anything to do with who we choose as our friends and a number of other things. And so I am convinced by now that a lot of us come to church and complain on Sunday about what's going on in our lives. And what's going on in our lives is the result of us ignoring what we hear on Sunday. Now, did I say that too fast for you? I believe that while many of us come each Sunday with our blues, harmonicas, with our broken hearts, and with our sad songs about you don't know what my week was like, but the only reason we are continuing to have these serial bad weeks, week after week, is because we are continuing to ignore what we hear on Sunday. If you stop ignoring what you hear on Sunday, then you stop having the kind of weeks you complain about when you come back to church on Sunday. That's all I'm trying to say. And I really think that's kind of simple. But one of the issues is so many things around us have changed. I mean, things have changed like you would not believe. And I was thinking about some of the things that changed in my life. Could you give me a minute? I want to reflect. And you know what they say about old school people, right? We're always talking about way back in the day, the way things used to be and how they are. But I was thinking the other day, and I decided to write down a couple of things that are not what they were when I was born. For instance, when I was born, there was no penicillin. When I was born, there was no polio vaccine. When I was born, there were no frozen foods, no photocopiers, no contact lens. There was no the pill. There were no credit cards. There were no ballpoint pens. When I was born, there were no pantyhose, no dishwashers, no microwave ovens, no clothes dryers, no electric blankets, no air conditioners, and no permanent press clothes. We didn't even have FM radios. We had no CD players. We didn't have electric typewriters or word processors or computers, iPads or cell phones, and we didn't have no smartphones. Matter of fact, when I listen to the vocabulary and lexicon of people today, I mean, a chip was a piece of wood. A hardware was a hammer and nails. Software wasn't even a word when I was born. Well, why are you using up my time to talk about this? Well, let me tell you. What I'm trying to suggest to you is it's amazing how everything around us has changed, but most of us have changed so little. Well, you want to differ with me? Let's debate the moment. Are you wiser? Everything else has changed, so are you wiser now? Do you have a much better lifestyle? And when I say better lifestyle, do you have more joy? Do you have more peace at home? Is your family life much stronger than those of the people on whose shoulders you are now standing? I would submit to you that most of us are dealing with the same challenges and the same issues in the same way that our grandparents did. We're in different kind of places and we're using different tools, but our individual emotional strategies in our relationships with our money, with our friendships, and even with God are pretty much the same. And so while everything around us has changed, we have not changed. And what we have not figured out is that things changing around you don't change you. We have got to decide at some point in time that walking away from the wisdom of God to use my own intuition based upon my experience to develop my own personalized, custom-made manual for living is not really working for you. Could I ask you a personal question? Are you happy with where you are at this moment? And are you where you thought you would be at this moment in life? Most people I know, in all honesty, they have regrets. Now, a lot of times, most of us don't want to admit that if you're not a wise person, the opposite of being wise, is being a fool. Now, most of us never want to admit to anybody that we want to be a fool. Now, we can make references to it. There was a real popular group back in the day, and part of the soundtrack of my early life that said everybody plays the fool sometime. And usually most young and old people of most generations at some point in time have been able to hear an iteration of this particular song. And then listen to that. Everybody plays the fool sometime. So what it does, it incorporates the masses so nobody can ever look at me personally and say, you a fool. It just says everybody plays the fool sometime. So we're just throwing it out there. Well, hey, I've probably been a fool sometime, but I don't want to talk about it. Well, let me tell you, one of the reasons why most of us end up where we are is because we are more foolish than we choose to admit. Well, how could you say that, Pastor, and you don't even know me? Well, I could say that because if you are not walking in the way of wisdom, then you're walking in the way of a fool. It's impossible for you to be wise without wisdom. There are a whole lot of people think they're wise and they don't want any wisdom. They don't want anybody telling them anything. They don't want to hear about your experiences. They say stuff like Madonna, Papa don't preach. Nobody wants to hear instructions. Everybody believes that it's up to them to go out, explore, and recreate the wheel and figure out life for themselves. Look how far you get behind if everybody start at the starting point. If everybody in life is happy starting at get set, go, figure it out. And then here you go again with no coaches, with no nurturers, with no guides, with no Sherpas, with no one to show you up the side of the mountain, with nobody to give you a heads up about where the dangers lie in life. Well, it's amazing to me when I realize that most people don't realize what fools we are. And we are so reluctant to admit that we're fools. Sometimes we say things like, well, yeah, they made a fool out of me. Or they fooled me. Well, fooling me just means I was a fool. But it's another way to cast the foolish dimension as if it's not an active part of any of the outcomes in my life. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is that Proverbs reminds us that anytime you decide that God don't know what he's talking about, well, then you've chosen the way of the fool. Anytime you make a decision that the Bible is not right, then you've decided that you want to be a fool, because either you walk in wisdom or you walk in foolishness. If you remember, if you're a Bible reader, then you'll remember that in chapter 9 and chapter 10 of Proverbs, he talks about two women giving a party. The crazy woman Folly and Queen Wisdom. Queen Wisdom, parties promised life. The people who went in Folly's house ended up dead. And so what I'm here to suggest to you is that most of us are continuing to debate about whether or not God's strategies for our life are right. And what I'm trying to tell you, if there's any sliver of doubt in your mind that what God says makes sense, well, then I'm here to tell you, and inarguably and undoubtedly, you are a FOOL. Now, well, Pastor, that's insulting. No, I'm not here to insult you. So let me tell you what's my personalized definition of a fool. A fool is one who knows not that he knows not. Very simple. A fool is a person that don't know he don't know. And so as a consequence, people have said a whole lot of things about fools. Let me tell you a couple of things I've heard about fools, and we're gonna get into this and get finished. A fool may talk, but a wise man speaks. The difference between a wise man and a fool is that the wise man doubts while the fool is always certain. It's better to keep your mouth closed and let people think you are a fool than open and remove all doubt. Never argue with a fool, especially in public, because the onlookers may not be able to tell the difference. Some people are like clouds. When they disappear, it's a brighter day. And it usually applies to the fools in your life. Don't underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. A fool always finds a fool to admire him. You probably want to write some of these now. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. You can lead a fool to wisdom, but you can't make him think. How about that? You can lead a fool to wisdom, but you can't make him think. The world is a comedy to those who think. Because when you think, you wonder why do people do such crazy and unbelievable things. When you are a thinker, it bothers you. But now let's look at the qualities of a fool. And these are the qualities of people who are not applying the wisdom of God. So I don't want you to think that, I know some fools. Now, anybody who does not apply the wisdom of God and substitutes their own experience and what they think and what they know is a fool. Because to decide that God does not know people and he created people, it is really beyond all comprehension for human beings. And so what I'm trying to get you to zero in on is that fools make poor lifestyle decisions. If you know anybody who's regretful of most decisions they make, well, then those people are categories to be nominated for the fool of the week, the fool of the month, or the fool of the year. Because fools make poor lifestyle decisions. And a poor lifestyle decision only reveals one thing about you: the absence of God's wisdom. And when there's no godly wisdom in your life, you will end up doing stupid things, and you ask yourself crazy questions like, what was I thinking? When the truth was you weren't really thinking. You were just doing some things you wanted to do. Now, if you want to help in the future know who fools are, and in case you're not ready to categorize the person you see in the mirror as one, let's talk about some of the qualifications. I'm sorry, not the qualifications, because I guess that means, you are ascribing to become something, and you need to have some positive assets about you and dimensions of your developmental personality, your presentation, etc., to be qualifying for something. So what I want to say is that in the absence of the wisdom of God, it is amazing that most of us have some characteristics that will leave no doubt in your mind that you are not as wise as you think you are. Now, verse 1 in chapter 18 says what? Fools lack wisdom. You can't think you are wise and you don't know anything about God. You can't think you're wise and you don't have a GPS greater than what I think. And talking about what the Lord has dropped in your spirit. Well, I'm here to go by what the Lord has dropped in his word. Because what he's put in his word is far more comprehensive than what your little spirit can contain or either entertain. Because most of us are made very uncomfortable by the sincere, serious, impactful presence of God in our life at every minute of the day. Most of us can't handle divine scrutiny every second because there are compartments in our lives where we've told God, no trespassing. And in those areas of your life where you told God no trespassing, then you are definitely walking with your eyes closed, with a mask on, and in a foolish demeanor. Well, one, fools isolate themselves. It says fools are loners. Why do fools isolate themselves? They isolate themselves because they don't lack incoming. They don't lack incoming mail. They don't lack incoming guidance because fools believe I know enough on my own to not to need anybody's participation in my development or in my growth. So fools love to hang out by themselves. They are social, but they don't get serious with anyone but themselves. They'll talk to you about the weather. They'll go out and have a Coke or some coffee, talk and smile about the Cubs or the Sox or whatever your home team is. They'll talk about cars. They'll talk about the weather. They'll talk about a lot of things, but they never really expose who they are as long as you know them. Because fools don't usually ask for advice. They don't want input because they think they know. And they're also quite suspicious and apprehensive of everyone else's motives. They like to believe that while they don't know what they got, but they like to believe that you see something in them that you want, and they're going to make sure you don't get it. But they don't know where it is themselves. A fool lacks wisdom. He isolates himself. Then verse 2 says he's opinionated. Fools have already reached conclusions before you start having a conversation. Don't you know a lot of people who never change anything after you make a speech of 10 minutes? And they go right back to saying the same thing. And you're going like, how can you be saying the same thing after what I just explained? Well, let me explain them to you that you couldn't understand. Some people are just waiting on you to finish so they can take up where they left off. They're not listening to what you had to say. They're just giving you a chance to say it so they can say, well, I let you say what you had to say. Now I'm back on my point. When the whole point of communication is for thought to keep flowing so we can have clarity and greater understandings. But fools are so opinionated, they don't want to hear what you have to say. They'll let you say it, but they're not paying attention. Fools do not see the pleasure or the lack of pleasure in their words. Or the Bible uses the word, they don't see the delight of their words. In other words, they don't understand that what they are saying, nobody is being blessed by it. There's no development by it. The Bible tells us clearly that no communication should proceed from our mouths that is not helpful to the hearers. Now, but I'm going to say that for my little gossip part when I get down to the gossip dimension, okay? So hang on. But if you happen to go to sleep before I finish, then you heard something I said at the end, and you can tell people what he said just before he went off. Fools don't see the disgrace of their words. Fools don't see the danger of their words. Could I read that scripture for you again? Because it blows my mind of what it says about fools and what they tend to provoke. Verse 6 says, the words of a fool starts fights. Do him a favor and gag him. That's in the Message. And you and I both know people who can't stop talking. They love to hear what they have to say. What does verse 2 say in the Message? Fools care nothing for thoughtful conversation. All they do is run off at the mouth. Now, a lot of fools run off at the mouth because they don't want to give you a chance to control the conversation, because you may bring up a subject that they are unable to participate in the discussion. Which is why some people never stop talking, because they're afraid you may introduce something to the communication session that they don't know anything about, and they don't want to appear ignorant, so they're always leading the conversation. That's how you know you're in the presence of a fool. I never thought I would read a scripture that says the words of a fool start fights. There are a lot of you all have been stuck, and you're trying to figure out why you're antagonistic, or why do you come across to people as if you are harsh, not understanding of them. I know you love to tell them it's just because I'm passionate. But a lot of times it's also because you're trying to keep the platform so no one else can introduce anything that would take you out of control of the conversation. And see, fools love counsel. Wise people love counsel. Fools hate counsel. Please forgive me. You and I know that whenever people say things like, I don't have nothing else to say, take them at their word. And don't try to make them say something, because sometimes when they come back and repeat it, you're just as upset and disturbed and distraught as you were in the first place. And so with this, I've come to say to you, look at all of these things. Fools are loose with their words. They tell you stuff like, well, you know me, whatever comes up, come out. Well, you know you're talking to a fool when they say that. You have to be able to monitor. You have to censor. You have to be able to craft your words for the audience, even if it's only one person to whom you are speaking. But fools don't see the destruction of their words, because fools don't see anything wrong with them. Maybe that's why a wise person once said, if you meet somebody who knows, you can teach them. If you meet somebody who don't know that they don't know, shun them, because they are a fool. You're wasting your time when you talk to people who don't know they don't know. They think you're the one who doesn't know. Man, I am so disturbed because so many of us are engaging in behavior that's not for us. Fools isolate themselves in antisocial behavior, and we're consumed by our own desires and our own self-gratification. Being an opinionated person reveals that we don't really want understanding. We just want to show off my opinion. Sometimes the conversation is just a showcase for all of my personal opinions. And the conversation is really meant to be communication, where I expose the thoughts and the feelings of my heart, the words in my head, the pictures I cannot paint, the graphs I cannot create, but with words I can invite you to sit down in the very center of my mind, my emotions, and we can emote and we can converse, and you can feel what I feel just based on the vehicles of verbiage that I use to convey my thoughts to you. Opinionated is not what you want to be. It's not wise. Wise people surround themselves with a multitude of opinions. And when you're wise, your opinion is not the only one that matters. I am struck by the idea that Proverbs 18 and so much of Proverbs zeroes in on the things we think are really so insignificant and unimportant. And among them are our words. We talk about how cheap talk is, people with the gift of gab. Anybody can, talk or make a speech. But the most dangerous thing that you and I can do to demonstrate and to allow our default reaction in life to be foolish and ungodly is to decide that everything that God says is not in play in 2025 because it's a new world. It's a new world, but it's the same old people. That's what I tried to say to you earlier. People are fundamentally even more corrupt than they've ever been, with more tools to corrupt themselves. I have come to remind you finally that what you and I are engaged in is a once in a lifetime endeavor. The journey of life is uncertain, and you and I will never be able to repeat the trip. And since we can't repeat this trip, I want to invite you as an individual to decide at this point in your life, I don't want to die without knowing that what God says makes sense. I don't want to die not knowing some of the things that God has promised to me. And allow me to close with this. The reason you and I have been given these choices is because God had a plan for us. And God's plan for us was to take care of us completely. But so what happened? The serpent, Satan, manifestation showed up in the Garden of Eden and had this conversation with Eve and said to her, if you want to be as smart as God and not have to ask him stuff and figure out things for yourself, just eat this here fruit right here and you good to go. And that was the violation of God's admonition of them to stay away from the tree. Meaning that the one thing that God did not want us to become was independent thinkers. Well, what do you mean? There was no need for you to be an independent thinker because God had planned to give us a lifetime of care with no end to your life. The introduction of man thinking for himself and wanting to be the sole arbiter of his own destiny is what brought death into the scheme of the universe. Think about it. And so now we were put out of God's house, out of the Garden of Eden. We were dismissed. We were summarily disposed of and invited not to return. And then God said, you refused the wisdom I gave you. You didn't take my instructions. I told you everything was good. Just don't bother this tree. But the love of God was so magnanimous and so amazing that he gave us Jesus. And what Jesus did, believe it or not, was gave us a second opportunity not to bite the fruit that hung on the tree. In other words, everything not biting the fruit in Eden would have produced, now the promises of Jesus produces. Walking in the way of wisdom will give you the benefits of being in Eden. Even though we were fallen, God has given us a chance to lift ourselves up by walking in wisdom. And most of us are still trying to debate whether God is smart enough to know what works in 2025. And we are not smart enough to know or to figure out that the reason things are not going better is because we think God is dumber and we're smarter. And I'm here to tell you, walk in the way of wisdom. Walking in God's harmonic guidance. In other words, walking as God guides us with no rebellion. Walking as God tells us to without believing there might be a better way. When you hear him speak, you cannot presuppose, what if there's a better way that God don't know about? And that's what most of us live, even though we never say it. That's why God is not a part of our finances, our relationships, our interactions with both men and women and other people in our lives, because we think that the people we have interacted with has given us better instructions on how to deal with people than the Word of God. We think God is too idealistic and we are more realistic. And what's more real than God? God's been here forever and you won't stay for long. I am not clear at why we keep debating about whether I ought to do what God say. I got to throw some of me in. Some of you being thrown in is the reason your life is where it is. It could be completely different if you would let God once again do the thinking. That's why he gave us Jesus, the wisdom of God, so we would have direction and guidance about which way to go and what to do, when, where, and with who. Hey, I thank you for joining me. And I'm happy I was able to share with you some information about fools, because fools rush in where angels wouldn't even think about going. And they've got complete comprehensive coverage from heaven. Don't be a fool. Get into the wisdom of God. Will you? I appreciate you. I thank you so much for joining me. I didn't have a guest today. You were my guest, and I thank you for being a part and joining me right here on the Parson'S porch. You were a beautiful guest, and next time you come, bring a pitcher of iced tea or some lemonade so we can sit back and continue this conversation. I'd have a great guest next week. I look forward to you joining me again live right here on Facebook Live and YouTube. We'd love to have you. Make sure you download the app as well and share the information. Help us market this wonderful station. Help us get the word out about the wonderful things being done here at WVTC. Hey, God bless you. I love you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you. Don't forget to check out Loveland's Little Convos, my baby, who's 4 going on 40. She'll have you laughing and crying all at the same time. Come by and see us at Logos Baptist Assembly, 4100 King Drive. We'd love to have you one Sunday really soon at 10 a.m. Thanks again for joining me, and share the word. And please tell your pastor about this Pastor Parson'S Porch, the podcast for preachers and lay people. Join me again next Wednesday at 2. Love you.
Go to your Apple or Google Play Store and download the WVTC Gospel Radio app today. You can also say, Alexa, play WVTC Radio Skills.
Would you like to play WVTC Radio Network?
Absolutely. Download it today.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.